What is up guys, my name is Naga220 and welcome to our new series of guides on gear set composition. Today I will be showcasing the blueprints of a highly optimized Alpha Bridge DPS build that will enable you to easily solo any tier 5 PvE activity except incursions, and share some general tips on how you should compose your gear. So, without further delay, let's jump in. Now the most important aspect of putting together any build is the firearms to stamina to electronics item ratio. And simply put, this is the number of gear set pieces that has firearms, stamina, or electronics as its primary stat relative to the others. Generally speaking, a balanced build should always be composed of 3 pieces of gear that has stamina rolled as its main stat. I have played a lot of online RPGs and I can tell you guys that stacking any other stat that doesn't aid in your survivability is going to negatively affect your DPS over long periods of time. Survivability is the single constant in the equation of DPS. The longer you can stay alive due to your damage mitigation or resistance ultimately translates into more damage over time. Hence the reason I believe that a minimum of 3 items should be rolled in stamina, and the rest of the stats can be made up through the use of prototype mods and other item pieces rolled in whatever particular stat that you need. So with this build we were able to achieve over 307k DPS, 415k toughness, and just under 100k skill power. The reason why I did not state the exact numbers is because when we use skills, these numbers are going to increase. It is also important to note that we were able to attain over 53% damage mitigation, and again this stat is not the final stat because it is going to increase after we use our skills. Let's take a closer look at the individual gear pieces that make up this build, starting with the body armor. Now, I know how difficult it is to actually acquire the new named Barrett's Bulletproof Vest, let alone get one that's decently rolled, but I can assure you it's worth the effort because hands down it is the best new named gear piece item in the game. The positive stat bonuses alone put this piece of gear in an entirely different class. This is a must-have item. It increases skill power by 10% when no skills are on cooldown, increases your damage by 5% when one skill is on cooldown, and it increases your armor by a whopping 10% when both skills are on cooldown. This simply means you're going to do more damage and you're going to be more resistant to damage depending on the frequency of your skill use, not to mention an extra 10% more skill power to activate the first skill used in your attack combo. Now, for the major attributes, you want to make sure that armor and damage to elites are rolled for a PvE focused build, or armor and exotic damage resilience for a more flexible PvP build. The reason for the armor is pretty much self-explanatory. You want to stack as much armor as possible. For the minor attribute, I chose to go with ammo capacity, because soon you'll discover that you burn through bullets very quickly when using an Alpha Bridge setup, and ammo capacity helps to offset this minor annoyance. As far as mods go, you want to use 2 prototype stamina mods that has an armor roll of at least 260. Next up we've got the mask. For the major attribute, I chose skill power as it improves the effectiveness of your heals, which may very well save your life during a deadly encounter. Enemy armor damage is recommended for the minor stat. You want to use a prototype firearm mod that has an armor roll of at least 260. Moving along to the knee pads. Once again, you want to have armor rolled as your major attribute. For the minor attribute, again, enemy armor damage, and any 2 stats will do. For mods, you should use a prototype electronics mod that has an armor roll of at least 260. This is very important guys, because you're going to need the extra electronics to activate one of the weapon talents that I'm going to discuss later on. Moving on to the backpack. Yet again, you want to have armor rolled as your major attribute and ammo capacity as your minor attribute. For mods, you should use a prototype stamina mod that has an armor roll of at least 260 and first aid self-heal performance mods. I managed to get 2 of them at 6.5 a pop, which will give me an additional 13% HP when I heal myself. These numbers may seem small, but they can make all the difference and should not be overlooked. Next up we have gloves. You definitely want to use a pair of Savage gloves that has critical hit damage and critical hit chance rolled on them, because when combined with the extra 7% critical chance against enemies out of cover, it significantly boosts your DPS potential. Now for the last stat, I opted for damage to elites because this is a PvE focused build. However, if you're leaning more on the PvP side of things, I would recommend you roll weapon damage that corresponds to the weapon you will be using. The holster. When choosing a holster, you want to ensure that all the main stats are greater than 1100. As always, the larger the number, the better. For the major attribute, that's right, you've guessed it, you're going to want to roll armor. You should also use a support station mod that increases the speed of healing. Now, that should cover the individual pieces of gear. I must point out that it doesn't matter which pieces of gear are rolled into which primary stat, as long as you have your gear in a 2:3 ratio of firearms to stamina. That is to say, 2 pieces must be rolled in firearms while the other 3 pieces must be rolled in stamina. We don't factor in the holster in this ratio because it boosts all 3 stats. Another key feature of this build is the 55% enemy armor damage. Combine this with an additional 16% damage to elites, and you are going to literally melt elite mobs if you've managed to successfully replicate this build. And I can assure you, it's not that difficult to do. Now, let's look at the nexus of any Alpha Bridge build, and that is the weapon talents. And just for those of you who may be new to the division, I thought that it may be worth mentioning that the 4-piece Alpha Bridge set bonus gives you all the weapon talents that are on your primary weapon and secondary weapon only if they are both of the same weapon type. So you need to have an SMG or assault rifle or whatever you use equipped in both the primary and secondary slots in order for the bonus to be activated. My primary weapon in this build is a military G36 assault rifle, and my secondary weapon that is equipped for the sole purpose of acquiring the extra 3 weapon talents is the FAMAS. The reason why I'm not using the FAMAS as my primary weapon is because, like most people, I honestly believe this weapon is not very good due to the ridiculous amounts of horizontal recoil. However, the 15% damage bonus you get from Uncomplicated cannot be overlooked. Ideally, what I should be using is a LVOA-C. Unfortunately, I have not been able to acquire one that has decent rolls. The first talent is Responsive. Damage is increased by 10% when closer than 10 meters to the target. This is an amazing, well-rounded damage boosting talent and really helps you quickly take out enemies that get way too close for comfort. Next we have Predatory. Killing a target regenerates 35% of your health over 20 seconds. Healing from this talent is second to none, and in my opinion is the best source of self-sustained healing you can find outside of your healing station and the Nomad 3-piece bonus. Since we do not have any health on kill rolled on our gear, this talent is an absolute necessity for PvE. And this talent is the reason I used an electronics mod in the knee pads in order to have it activated. For PvP, however, I suggest you roll this out to Brutal, Deadly, or Swift. Next we have Focused. When no skills are on cooldown, your weapon damage is increased by 10%. Now, considering when you're solo at least, one of your skills is probably always going to be on cooldown. This may not be the best talent, and the only reason I'm using this is because of the annoying RNG that exists in the division. Needless to say, Focused isn't entirely useless. If you manage to get the drop on an enemy, you will benefit from the bonus as long as you're not forced to use any of your skills. If you're lucky and you manage to find or craft a decent assault rifle with responsive and predatory, occupying the first 2 talent slots, and the 3rd slot is free for you to reroll, I suggest that you try to get determined if you're more PvE focused, but if you're PvP focused, ferocious, fierce, or deadly will do just fine in that 3rd slot. Next up we have destructive. Armor destruction value is increased by 15% when using this weapon. When this is combined with the innate armor damage bonus on the assault rifle and the additional bonuses that you would have rolled on your gear, you will be able to achieve an amazing 55% total enemy armor damage. This, my fellow agents, is what allows you to quickly dismantle the armor of any level 34 elite, and why I strongly recommend you use assault rifles with this build. The talent is an integral part of this Alpha Bridge build and should not be left out. Next up is Unforgiving. Missing health segments increase your damage. 1 missing segment, 10%. 2 missing segments, 25%. This is the ultimate clutch talent for both PvE and PvP, and is an absolute necessity. Unforgiving has the highest damage modifier in the game, making you incredibly lethal at low health, especially in PvP, since most players tend to rush in blindly for that fatal kill shot. However, they will be doing so at their own peril as long as you have this talent equipped. The final weapon talent is Uncomplicated. Damage is increased by 15%. Accuracy and stability mods reduce this bonus. Now, this is a superb talent in its current state, because what the talent's description doesn't tell you is that the bonus is only reduced by approximately 2 to 3% when you do in fact use mods with stability or accuracy. So you still end up getting an additional 13% of your base damage. This is just pure gold, and I can tell you an extra 2 to 3% of damage is not worth sacrificing the stability or accuracy of your weapon, nor is it worth substituting the 2 high-end pieces in this build with strikers to get the 2-piece stability bonus. It is also important to note that as long as you guys stick to the weapon talents that I've just outlined, you will be able to do massive amounts of DPS with very little trade-offs. Okay, so let's briefly talk about weapon mods. In my optics slot, I am using a CQ BSS scope that has 12.5% stability, 2.5% critical hit chance, and 5.5% headshot damage. For my magazine, I am using a extended magazine that allows my clip size to have 101.5% more ammo, 2.50% critical hit chance, and 4.8% rate of fire. For my underbarrel, I am using a red angled grip that comes with 14.0% stability, 4.5% reload speed, and 5% optimal range. And finally, for my muzzle, I am using an Omega rifle suppressor. This has 18% headshot damage, 4% critical hit damage, and 2.5% critical hit chance. At a glance, the general theme of my weapon mods are stability and critical hit chance. Now, the reason why I chose critical hit chance is because it increases my overall crit hit chance and synergizes really well with the Savage Gloves. On the other hand, I chose stability because it's just personal preference. I am not heavily penalized by the Uncomplicated talent for stacking stability, and I have more control over my assault rifle, which will enable me to be more accurate at medium to long range. Because the assault rifles are really designed for short to medium range, I tend to have some difficulty taking on enemies at really long distances. And because I'm using Alpha Bridge and I don't have the luxury of a sniper rifle, that's the main reason why I would stack stability on my mods. Now, if you've managed to hone your skills and you can engage targets at medium to long range without being affected by the weapon's recoil or any other stability issues, I would suggest instead of getting mods with stability as the main stat, you could probably try for optimal range or headshot damage. Well guys, that brings us to the end of our guide. I hope that you found this video useful or helpful, and if so, please be sure to hit the like button and leave a comment below. because we're really interested to see what you guys do with everything that we've outlined in this guide. We also have a link in the description below for those of you who may be curious as to how this build actually performs in a PvE setting, and I guarantee you it's going to blow your mind. Once again, my name is Naga220, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you in The Division.